So this slide selection is on the cell membrane of eukaryotic cells, or those that contain nuclei. So what is the cell membrane, or sometimes called plasma membrane? The cell or plasma membrane is a thin layer, and it is found around the organelles of animal cells and plant cells, and it's a thin layer. It's quite flexible, and its function is to separate what is on the outside and inside, i.e. the external and internal environment. So one can think of it as a gatekeeper that controls any and all substances that enter and also those that leave. Much like you control who enters and leaves your home. And so this is an important topic for various different students at different levels, including GCSE, A-level, BTech, and T-level. But all these students need to know that the cell membrane is composed of a phospholipid bilayer, i.e. there are two layers, bi meaning two. And so the bilayer is a little bit like a sandwich where you have hydrophilic or water-loving heads on the outer side and on the inner side of the membrane, and in between you have the hydrophobic or water repelling stroke hating tails. But it's a little bit more complicated than that, because within the bilayer there are proteins, there's cholesterol, and even carbohydrates. The proteins have a role to transport molecules into and out of the cell and act as receptors too. Now, cholesterol is interesting because a lot of people believe that cholesterol is entirely bad, but we need cholesterol too. Cholesterol adds to stability within the membrane. And carbohydrates in the membrane play a role in cell recognition and signaling, so that the body knows what cells belong where and whether a cell is part of the system itself or foreign. And so biologists tend to describe the cell membrane as a fluid mosaic. And we see mosaics all the time. You can see the mosaic on the top here. It's beautiful. The phospholipid bilayer that you see below is a very basic construct, and you can see it as a thin sheet or section of a three-dimensional cell, and you can also see a schematic of a cell membrane a little bit higher up. So the function of the cell membrane is to act as a barrier and to protect the internal environment. And some of you may have heard the term homeostasis. It means the maintenance of a constant internal environment that is essentially optimal and allows biochemical reactions to function optimally. And so that happens at the cellular level too. And the membrane allows certain things to pass through and allows small molecules like oxygen to come in freely, which is, of course, necessary for aerobic respiration. And larger molecules like glucose and specific ions. Transport mechanisms. So anything with the word passive in front usually implies low levels of energy or no energy at all. And so, you know, if you're passively listening to this, you're doing so without taking notes and really trying to absorb the information, which is good too. Diffusion happens passively. And remember the definition of diffusion. It is movement of a substance from areas of high concentration to low. And so that happens with water too. Osmosis is the diffusion of water through a semi-permeable membrane. Facilitated diffusion uses protein channels. And active transport, as the name suggests, moves substances against their concentration gradient using a chemical called adenosine triphosphate, which is abbreviated to ATP. And cells communicate and congregate together. Communication happens through proteins and receptors that are made of proteins to detect other proteins called hormones and other chemicals in the body, and allows cells to respond to their environment. So the importance in health and disease. Health. Proper function of the membrane ensures nutrients enter and waste exits properly and efficiently. And it maintains cell integrity during changes and fluctuations of temperature and/or pH. Disease. Faulty membranes can cause disease, such as cystic fibrosis, where defective protein channels disrupt ion flow. And many viruses, including HIV and COVID-19, exploit receptors in order to enter cell membranes. And this also happens in bacteria, where bacteriophage or phage enter in the same way. Practical applications. In the world of biotechnology, understanding membranes aids in drug delivery systems, because drugs need to get into cells sometimes. Lab techniques. Osmosis experiments using potatoes were one of my favorite and a very good practical at GCSE and A-level level. And investigating diffusion rates in agar blocks. You can see a dish with some agar in it. That's a good one to do at T-level, A-level, just to consolidate all this information. So in conclusion, I want you to think about the cell membrane as being essential for protecting the cell and maintaining a homeostatic or constant optimal environment inside, and enabling communication. It is its structure and function that are central to life and medical science. But always think of the membrane as both a gate as well as a barrier at cellular level. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next video.